Welcome, everybody, to Voices of Recovery. Our guest today is the very productive and sometimes energetic and very entertaining Shawn Eves. I'm your host, Gregory Greer. Welcome to this week's episode. I want to introduce our guest today, Shawn Eves. I have a little history with Shawn, and by that I say academically. And so, Shawn, welcome to the program. I just want to say to the audience, you and I first met in school at ULM when getting our bachelor's. And for the audience, this whole preface of the show is about uniting and building the professional recovery community in Louisiana and beyond, Arkansas area, Arkansas, Mississippi. And you, when I say productive, you are on fire. We met in college. That must have been 23 years ago. And what you're doing today is unbelievable. I mean, you are on fire. So welcome to the show. Thank you. So let me ask you, what are you doing these days? What are you doing in the world of recovery?
A little bit of everything. I started my I worked with Lincoln Nova for about a year as I was transitioning into my private practice. And I started a individual private practice. I work with mental health as well as substance abuse. And so I started that in Ruston, and it grew very quickly. I started in October, and it was full in December. And within 3 months, I had another office in Monroe. And as I got that filled up, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, which is part of my life, I was offered the contract with 4th JDC Drug Court. And so now I have 4th JDC Drug Court as well. So I do both private practice part-time, 4th JDC Drug Court. And then as of yesterday, we are starting a new program in the jail for Blue Walters at OCC. And I do trainings, and I hate to just drone in and on, but I also do. Yeah, I do.
Everything you do.
LACT. I've been the instructor for LACT school. The videos are actually on Moodle, so I did the counseling process for the LACT school, and then as part of LACT, part of my give back is me and 2 other counselors provide CEU trainings quarterly to the counselors here. And so we do that as a free service to be able to educate the new counselors. I'm at that age now to where I'm no longer a baby counselor, and I have things that I can give. And so part of that is offering those CEU trainings for LACT.
What is your credential or credentials?
I am LPC, LAC, and CCS. And so that's addictions, mental health, and clinical supervision for the addictions community.
And see how much you're accomplishing. I say that in an active way. Do you sleep?
Yes, actually I do. I'm really good about balancing self-care, which is something that I try to tell my CITs that I work with, the counselors in training that I work with, self-care is absolutely necessary in this field. And so I will say my first year, I thought I was going to die. I did. I had so much on my plate, and it seemed like, I started that business in October. I got it stabilized. Then I got the new office. I had to decorate, which I take very seriously. Decorations is very important to me. So I had that second office. I had to get it ready. I got it up and ready. And then the next thing I know, in December, I was given, that next December, I was given the drug court contract, and I had another office that started from scratch, and I had to get it ready. And then I think after December, in May, I lost a counselor, and so I had to take on, that was last May, so I had to take on her role, and so I was kind of working a lot more than I should. So I've recently really, really stabilized, hired a new counselor, and I have a good balance. I do rest. Okay. I go to bed at 9:30, 10.
Oh, well, excellent. So for the others out there that, seek to be a counselor, and there are many that actually come out of treatment and go, gosh, I want to be a counselor. And then they start that journey. I'm wondering, like, what was your motivation? Because what you're doing is such, I use the word productive, but I mean, you're a machine. You're putting so much together. Is this where you saw yourself? No. Is this what you plan to do with your life?
Absolutely not. No.
Well, where did this come from?
I started my journey in 98. I am also a recovering alcoholic and addict. And so I went to treatment at a place called MADAC. It was with the state of Louisiana. It's no longer available. And my counselor was Roy Boss and Lucy Lewis.
Wow.
I know. And I never had any desire really to work in addictions. I wanted to go into, working with abused women or something like that, but I ended up at a bank. And so from 98, for about 6 years, from 98 until about 2004, I worked at Chase, JP Morgan Chase. And it's interesting because that was actually everything that I needed to give me the supervision role, because I worked from, it was my first job in sobriety. And so I'm a temp, and then I became a full-time employee, and then I made it to team leader, and then I made it to supervision. And so I learned a lot there that I actually use now. Unfortunately, there was a huge reduction in force. I lost my job. I made the decision to go back to school, which is when you and I kind of started running into each other. And from there, I was just doing a general studies degree, trying to get a bachelor's degree, and I didn't quite know what I was going to do. But whenever I graduated, it was amazing. Lucy Lewis, who was my first counselor in 98, actually called me and said, "Hey, Shawn, I'm just curious, would you ever want to come to work in addictions?" And I was decorating at Ivan Smith. I was I'm not a decorator.
You said you like decorating.
I love
what are you
to,
talking about?
But back then I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember going in and I told the guy at Ivan Smith, I was like, "Look, this sales job is killing me. I can't get home to my kid. I really need to work 8 to 5. I know you need a decorator. I don't decorate worth a crud. Could you hire me?" And he said, "Go decorate the table." And he gave me the job. And so I started decorating at Ivan Smith. So anyway, I wasn't doing a lot, and I didn't really have any idea which direction I wanted to go into. So when Lucy called me, I said, "Well, let's see. Sure. Why not? It's the state of Louisiana. And so it was really interesting because I believe in God. And so like whenever I took that job, I remember praying because there is a huge rumor and some truth to it, actually, that a lot of people get into the recovery business and they forget about their own recovery and they relapse. And so I was very, very afraid that if I took the job that I was going to end up forgetting about my own personal recovery and that I was going to end up, relapsing. And so I just remember praying in that office and saying, "Okay, God, if this is what you want me to do, then I need you to show me. Otherwise, get me out of here." And the next day, I had a full-time position, which really doesn't happen that quickly with the state of Louisiana. I had a full-time position.
That's accurate.
Yeah. You have to go through the 6-month contracts, and then they'll renew that 6 month. And this was after my 6-month contract was up. We had one lady that'd been there for 4 years on a 6-month contract. And I prayed, and the very next day, I took it as, this is where you're supposed to be. And so I went full-time with the state of Louisiana, and I planned to stay with the state of Louisiana for the rest of my life. And that didn't happen.
And there was a new trajectory from there.
Yeah. I walk wherever I land. It's I never know where I'm going to end up, and I can put my plans in motion, and a lot of the time those plans are exactly what I need to be able to get me to the next part. So, working for the state of Louisiana gave me a lot of connections, a lot of beautiful connections that I still have. I ended up getting my master's degree in mental health. I went to work for Rifle Recovery I was part of a reduction in force. That's what it was. I went to work with drug court in 2010 after the reduction in force at the state of Louisiana. SOAR closed down. And so I started working with drug court. And that was just another little piece of that loop that has brought me here. Left there, went to Rabel Recovery, went back to the state of Louisiana. I've done a lot.
Right. So finding one's path. And like I think I talked about last week, we had Jordan Blacher was on.
Love him.
And we discussed a little bit, if somebody wanted to become a counselor, how would they go about it, contacting ADRA, because LAC is the educating body for ADRA to, provide a license. And so the steps that you took, so you took the mental health first, because I took social work first before I began seeking an LAC. And
Well, I was actually a CIT while I was in the master's program, counselor in training.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so as a counselor in training, since you talked about self-care, let me throw that out there. I mean, what would you share with, our folks out there that are counselors in training? And I think that's imperative. So many people jump into the field right away. They saw what their counselors did, and they want to do that right away. And maybe pace themselves. What input might you have?
Well, I actually work a lot with CITs, and because I am a clinical supervisor, and
Exactly.
I do groups. And part of what I do is I teach them as a group, and I really, really encourage all CITs, instead of allowing we're having a problem. Here's the problem. Counselors in training are being thrown in as if they're actual counselors. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they're in training, which means that they need to be, monitored, and they don't need to carry caseloads. And so the people that I work with, in order for them to work with me, I let them know you can't carry a group. You can't carry a caseload. And what I really encourage them to do is to start in the intake process and start with tech. Learn how to be a tech. Learn what it looks like to be a tech. And while you're doing that, get your 180 hours, which is necessary to become a counselor. So you're working in the field, you're checking to see if you really can handle this clientele. You're getting your 180 hours. You're not even a counselor in training. Then, once you get your CIT, ask your boss if you can be sort of the intake coordinator or authorization review, working with the insurance.
Right.
And while you're doing that at the clinic, then you can go in with other counselors and monitor and sit with them. That way you're not carrying a whole caseload. And so I'm very grateful. I'm actually working with Serenity House now. Seth liked the idea, and it's almost like a training unit where I have several individuals. One is a tech, one is I love the way she did it. She started an authorization review. She was a CIT. She came over and started monitoring my groups at drug court. She sat in just like an internship. People, I know it's not ideal, but you sit in for free and you don't pay any money, but you sit in and you learn how to do the counseling. And then she moved into intake coordinator. So she started learning how to do the paperwork. And then I was like, okay, let's start working with biopsychosocials. So she started doing the biopsychosocials. That way, she's not feeling like an imposter because she doesn't know what she's doing. And so now she's at a place to where she's running a group. And it took less than a year for her to get there. But she did it in a way that walked her through all of the different, domains. And so, if you, as a CIT, I would recommend that you start circling around the intake process, biopsychosocials, discharge coordinator, tech work, anything that keeps you out of the group room, and be monitoring, watching your counselors. And then whenever your CCS, your supervisor says, okay, now it's time, then you start walking into doing the group work.
And so do you develop any curriculums for CITs? I mean, as a CCS, you have the phases one goes through prior to, but is there a curriculum?
I actually do use the stuff that we develop. Well, I use a lot of the information from the LACT class. I use a lot of that with my CCSs, with my CITs.
So look, I'm going to clarify first. When I say curriculum, I know there is a curriculum because what you said earlier I thought was pretty strong and important because of, a lot of treatment centers, if they need counselors, they'll just throw somebody in there as a CIT and they poof, and it's like, well,
it's awful.
Have they been cross-trained? And that's what you describe. Someone who's cross-trained with all these different roles so that they're aware, and so not overwhelmed with just this, this tsunami of expectations.
Yeah. It's actually, it's part of the burnout problem that we have with a lot of our counselors is, these CITs have never, they don't have any experience. The only experience that a lot of them have is that they have been in counseling themselves. A lot of them have gone to treatment, had great counselors. They don't really know what they can and cannot do. There is a scope of practice that unfortunately, the treatment centers are not really following. CITs are not supposed to be working in certain domains until they have a certain amount of hours behind them. And so I encourage, when you say curriculum, I don't have a set curriculum. I do start from the beginning with scope of practice, 42 CFR. Then I move into, starting with what are the intake paperwork. And
for the audience, I was going to bring up 42 CFR. Can you clarify?
Addictions is a little bit more strenuous whenever it comes down to what we can and cannot release. And
so we're talking about confidentiality?
Confidentiality, yes.
Right. Well, because some people talk about hospital, what their HIPAA is versus the 42 CFR, which has actually a stronger, what you're saying, tight lip, if that's a good verbiage to throw out there.
Yeah, 42 CFR is HIPAA, but it's intended strictly for our population. And it was developed so that we could protect our clients from feeling like if they go into treatment that they're going to get in trouble. And so 42 CFR is just can't confirm nor deny. I'm sorry. We don't release information without consent. It's very close-lipped.
And thank you for clarifying that it is HIPAA. Putting that out there because others, what they may or may not understand about confidentiality, and that's the first and foremost so that people feel safe in the environment so they can do some work.
Yeah. Without feeling like they're going to be retaliated against.
Right.
Nobody's going to, as a matter of fact, I really love it. I'll be honest with you. When I went to treatment, I was in the middle of a really, really bad divorce and a custody battle. And I do remember the attorneys trying to get my records and they were unable to because of 42 CFR. The state of Louisiana refused to give out my records. However, my first husband, was also had a history, and because he was in a psychiatric facility, I was able to get his records because they're under a different
guideline.
Yeah, HIPAA guideline.
Wow, isn't that? Well, that sounds like a circus. I meant no disrespect by that. I was just like, wow, holy mackerel, Andy. Okay. So, but see, that's a really good way to describe, the differences and how it was helpful. So I appreciate that. And with your knowledge and that you explained, I'm wondering too, because you are able to do education about presentations. So you've presented not just at LASAC, because I don't know if you brought this up in the accolades you presented earlier. I want to say quarterly, you're now giving presentations in Monroe for CEUs.
Yes.
And what is that?
Okay, that's actually our giveaway. That's the freebie. We don't charge for those. Roy Boss is my mentor. He's been with me since 98. He and I became very close friends when we worked together at drug court in 2010. And he is a lover of this field. He loves teaching, he wants people to be great counselors, and he wants our clients to have the best. And so he and I got together. Chris Salter is also a veteran in the field. He's been around for a really long time. He's with Teen Challenge. So the three of us got together and we decided, that we wanted to start offering trainings for the CITs. Now, it's so funny, those little weavings of jobs that I've had. I worked for the state of Louisiana the second time, and I was the training coordinator / interim regional director at the time. And because of the training, I learned how to do CEUs. I learned how to provide CEUs to counselors. And so I mentioned, hey, well, why don't we just make it a CEU event? I can even, because of my licensing as a LPC, I can offer LPCs information. And, it's really important for other mental health professionals that don't work in this field to learn about addictions and to learn about people with a history of addictions. And so we opened those classes up, and we do them quarterly. It's a 3-hour class. It's really not a class. It's more of a event. And we provide food. And Chris's company with Teen Challenge is very gracious, and they bring either snacks or food for, we call it mingling. Networking,
mingling, however you want to phrase it.
Nibble and network and nibble. So we just kind of
mingling.
Yeah,
Flashback from the back.
And it is. It's very much geared toward what you're talking about. There are plenty of clients out there. There are plenty of people with this problem. We don't have to fight over who gets them. We're not in shortage of clients. There's no arguing over, who's going to get the business. And so this event, we had like 54 counselors coming in on the very first one. We've done, I think, 2 or 3. I think we got the third one coming up.
I attended the first.
I think so.
It was great.
Which one was that?
I thought it was
treatment planning.
Yes.
Yeah, we did treatment planning. So it was just basically geared on how to create treatment goals for our clients to help them person-centered figure out which direction that they want to go in. The second one was becoming naturally therapeutic related to imposter syndrome. And then this upcoming one is going to be great for the LPCs and for the CITs. It's the developmental model of addiction. And it's just so many counselors want to get their tricks in and show what they can do. And, there's some things that you just don't need to be doing in the early stages of recovery when a person is not ready for some of the things that counselors want to do. It teaches them to stay with the basics.
Okay, keeping it simple.
Keep it simple, yes.
So I kind of want to switch gears because First, that was cool about the presentations that you give quarterly. Going back to presentations, because I want to get personal. And when I say personal, about our experiences in growing with this. So what's it feel like to give presentations? Because you developing your voice as a counselor all began X amount of years ago, because I want us to talk about LAC. What is your experience? What's your experience with LAC? How have you felt about being a presenter? Mm-hmm. Because now, like I said, you're a machine. Have you always been a machine? No. Have you always been so productive and personable when you present? And, how did you get there? And what stumbling blocks might you have experienced?
You just asked like 15 questions all in one.
Okay, I
can break them down. Okay, so LAC. Let me tell you a little bit about how much I love LAC. You need to know that, and I might tear up a little bit. LAC has been with me since I started. Mm-hmm. I started in, 2006 when I graduated, and the state of Louisiana required us to go to LAC. And so I went pretty much every year since 2006. And I've watched the ebbs and flows of LAC. And I did not fully understand how important LAC is until I started getting involved in the board. I was on the board for a bit, and I realized how important it is. We are the voice. for these clients that we're working with. And the more numbers that we have, the louder our voice carries. And if we don't get involved in LAC, who's going to be the one going in, pushing for decisions within our, legislation in Congress and all over the, like, who's going to be the one that says, hey, no, don't cut that. We need that. We've got to have the numbers. And so what I've found is there's a lot of addiction counselors that are not aware of how important that is. Social work board, I know you said you were a social worker. Social work board has a massive following, and they're heard.
Well, we teach advocacy.
Yes.
In graduate level, advocacy, I mean, in every course, there's going to be, that's one of the traits and features. But, and that's one thing about being on the board and working with LAC to try to help advocate. And Roy Boss, if anyone's someone who can advocate, I mean, he's key. He's an icon.
Yes, he is. He is a brilliant man, smartest man I've ever met. And so, like you asked about that, I love LAC. I think LAC is, when I walk into a LAC conference, I feel like I'm walking into a family reunion. Mm-hmm. The energy there is unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. It's a family. And I would love to see more people get more involved in LAC. And I would love to see the numbers grow, because I know that whenever our lobbyist goes in and begins talking to, officials about what we need, it looks a lot better to have 6,000 than, we want big numbers. Mm-hmm. They listen to that. And so, that's a passion for me. I talk about it every single time that we do one of our presentations. As for presenting, no, I'm not. As a matter of fact, I don't love talking in front of people. Once I started in addictions, I remember Roy asking, hey, can I come in and monitor you for one of your education things? And I was like, no. And then, like somebody else asked, was like, hey, I'd like to sit in. And I was like, no, no, absolutely not. I do get a little crunk, I guess.
Wait, a little what?
Crunk.
Crunk?
Crunk, yeah.
Is that a word?
I guess.
I haven't heard that. That must
crunk.
be hip.
Like, I'm not hip, but yeah. But I get a little excited, and there's no telling where my brain goes whenever I try to keep it as planned out. But sometimes I get excited, and it's fun. And but for a long time, no, I would not allow anyone to come in on me.
See, this is something I think is pretty significant for somebody else who's trying to engage. Like, there's some of those that maybe their ego is on fire and they want to present, and they want me. I did stand-up comedy for years because I just wanted attention, validation. Mm-hmm. And so for you to motivate yourself, because what was the motivation? I say to motivate yourself to do it. So what was the motivation to get up against whatever the fear is? Because what is the fear?
Imposter.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I do the imposter syndrome. That's really an important one. The last presentation that we did was Becoming Naturally Therapeutic by Jacqueline Small's book. If you haven't read it, it's so good. You must read it. All new counselors should read this book. It's so, so good. But that was something that Roy had given to me years ago. And I have battled imposter syndrome my whole life. It's so bad. Poor Roy, God bless him. He's just like, I don't know, Shawn, I don't know what to tell you, And it's it is, despite what you think, despite the lies that you tell yourself, you do it anyway. And I have lived the past 27 years going against everything that seems natural and normal to me, because what is natural and normal to me is oftentimes not healthy.
That message that you just shared is everything that people do in recovery to overcome the addiction. So the attachment they have to the lifestyle of being in the toxicity of one's addiction, alcoholism, etc. Mm-hmm. So take away alcohol and drugs, and then we have what's left is ourself.
Right.
And so overcoming, as they'll say in a 12-step model, the character defects, which is fear, you pushed yourself to overcome your fear.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize that recovery is much more than just stopping drinking. stopping the drugs. I mean, like I'm into that 27 years. I've been sober since Valentine's Day of 1998, 27 years later, and I am still fighting through the uncomfortables. And, you know, it's the stuff that happens after you put the plug in the jug that you really have to push through. And I'm not letting fear, I will not let fear hold me back. I will not let fear hold me back. I will run through fear like a high school football running through there. You know, like I don't
go, girl.
I am. I'm telling you, I will bust through it.
You get Forrest Gump, man. Run. Well, okay, so here's something I want to bring up, because as productive as you are, I mean, and I call you a machine today, because I recall, since we've known each other for a while, it was like, you know what, Greg, I think I'm going to just kick back, maybe retire. I'm only going to maybe work 2 or 3 days out of the week, and that's it. That's pretty much all I'm really going to do. And that was not but a few years ago.
I know.
And now it's like, well, I got this. I mean, I have like a full like ledger of activity. And so it's like, what script got flipped, you know, where...
You know,
how did God talk to you? What was it? Well, one day I said, I got this for you. And you said, I am down. Bring it.
Well, I mean, like, okay, so when drug court came into my life, I really did have that intent. I was working, let's see, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and some Saturday. Is that right? I think, yes. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, some Saturday. And I was prepping and trying to start saving, get everything paid off with the business, because, you know, furniture is expensive.
Yeah.
And so, like, and then drug court happened, and I had all of this over here. Then I had to dwindle that down, and I was like, okay, well, I've got this drug thing. Maybe I could just do this. And then I wanted to do some things. I think I just got a breath. The freedom of private practice truly gave me a breath. And so it's actually a running joke. I'll give my husband a schedule, and I'll say, here's my schedule. And he'll like, yeah, that's going to change. It's like.
So it's kind of like an inspiration. So a second wind, when you said a breath. So I'm thinking a second wind. So the inspiration is that I found a new voice, and that voice can still change. Something else could feed you, nurture you. And I'm going to say that from a spiritual perspective. So what feeds me as a purpose? What gives me purpose?
Yeah.
And so I hear you say that I felt new purpose, which gave me new drive. And therefore you have these new, list of accolades that it's rock and rolling, which I want to praise you if no one has. I'll say it on here, Shawn, you rock. And you deserve to hear that.
Thank you.
You really do. If you don't hear it enough, throwing it out there to you. Because going to LAC, you introduced me into the world of board member, and that was your introduction to that. So talk about carrying the message, passing the torch, et cetera. So it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me. So I want to share that to you. And
I have like 8 to 9 CITs that I work with now that I get to do that with as well. I think that aging, when you age, of course,
what do you
legacy.
Mean, age?
Shush, I know. As you get older, right? Okay. You're no longer the baby. You're now, and this is, some of the Erickson stuff it becomes about legacy. And what do I have to give? And, I'm not exhausted because I'm doing the things that I love. And I'm doing it my way. I remember Susan, you had Susan on here, the first one.
Yeah.
God bless her. I remember sitting with her, and I sat down, and I had been doing it the same way. There's all these assignments you have to do in group, and you have to do this, and you have to listen to this. And I sat down with her. I came back from a LAC. I'm always encouraged when I come back from LAC because I hear so much. And I looked at her. I said, I'm done. She said, you're quitting? And I was like, no. I'm just done. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to do it my way. And I mean, like, my voice came out that day. Susan gave me permission to be able to say, I'm doing it my way. She said, okay. And I was like, no, seriously, like, I'm not doing that stuff that you want me to do no more, those papers. I'm going to do it my way. And I developed a way that is my way, and it's a good way. And I'm an experiential, you and I have done a lot of soul drama. That's my good stuff. We've done a lot of soul drama.
I was going to bring that up.
I know. I was working on it.
Yeah.
But the experiential is my way. I can take all of those documents and pieces of paper. And instead of talking in a chair about it, I can make them into, let's get up and do this. Let's learn it in a style where you can move around and have fun doing. Oh, here, write it on the board yourself. I'm not writing it. Get up. And they don't want to fall asleep. And it was just, once I started accepting my own way, my creativity, and I encourage the CITs that I work with to find their way. And their way's not going to be my way because I am fly by the seat of my pants. Once I started really accepting it, and I had someone that encouraged it, which was Susan, I got excited. I got really, really excited about work. And I don't know where I'm going to end up now.
But everything you just experienced just now talked about self-care. So experientially, and Susan was talking about this, I think, a few weeks ago, because soul drama, for me, is about self-care.
Yeah.
And so for CITs or even new professionals, whatever discipline in counseling they do, whether it's LPC, whether it's a social worker, or even LMFT, or marriage family therapist, to know oneself. And you can't take anybody anywhere that you yourself haven't sought to go.
Absolutely.
And so the soul drama experience is intended to explore oneself, especially with codependency. And codependent, as you know, there's no diagnosis. Congratulations, everybody. You're all codependent. I've said it before, just to what degree? Because it's the attachments that we learn in our family of origin, seeking approval, said love from our same-sex parent. So your experience with soul drama, I'm wondering, and how would you describe it?
Amazing. Amazing. It is absolutely life-changing. Now, I got excited about it.
Well, let me just say, the first time you went, you said, I'm not doing anything, Greg. You brought your notebook and you said, I'm only just going to take notes.
No, that was not me, actually. That was somebody else. I don't take notes.
That was another Shawn.
Yeah, that was not me, I promise.
Okay.
But I wasn't going to do anything. You're not fixing to have me doing nothing, by the way. Yeah. I will sit here, but I'm not doing a lot. And so, but no, it's first off, I've been doing my own personal work since 98. And I went through, it's like an onion. You got to peel through it. You peel through it. I've done the inner child work. And I do believe you can only take a person where you've been. And I have been very, very deep. The soul drama, it hit me because that type of counseling for me is experiential. I need to move around. It takes me out of the frontal lobe, out of my thinking, and forces me to use maybe a different part of my brain. And that creative side comes out, and I don't think as much. And when I'm not thinking, I'm not worrying. And so it allows me to get outside of that. What's everybody thinking about me? What's everybody who's looking at me? It's more about how do I feel right now? And so it allowed me to really get into the feelings. And, I think I've done probably 136 hours of soul drama. And
you've done many.
Yeah, I did a lot.
We went to Greece. Yeah, that was a beautiful experience.
Greece was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done, and there's been a lot of healing. Gosh, in soul drama alone, I have had so much healing.
What would be your biggest experience, most important?
In soul drama?
Yep.
There were a lot, but I just keep thinking of one individual. Soul drama is very spiritually connection.
Yes.
And I just remember I had been talking about my dad, and my dad died, of course, years ago, and he raised me, and I was sort of touched on that particular session, and one of the other members came out of the bathroom during a break. And he was he had some similarities, not really, but some similarities to my dad. And he just gave me a hug and said, I think your dad might have wanted you to have that. And I just fell apart. And I don't fall apart easily. I am very put together in the presence of other people. But I was free to be able to just fall apart. And that was very, very strong for me. Doesn't sound like much fun, but it's healing is what it is.
There you go. A new freedom and a new happiness.
Yes, that's
And so you walk through a challenge, a pain that is required in order to experience that. And that, I think that speaks volumes if I were to put a theme to this today about how I've overcome such. And by doing so, I was able to experience that. And is it fun? I think for those that have, I think those of us that have experienced it, when we face the fear, while part of it is fun because we know it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because we've already experienced a certain circumstance prior that tells us, I've done this before. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so that's why this allows us, because some people call that the dark night of the soul, and I'm not going to go, we don't have time to go into all that. But it's like, once I've gone through that really difficult time, when I go through it again, it's like, okay, I recognize this challenge. And so breaking the attachment to addiction, then we get to really look at that experience that we've been holding on to, that we didn't want to let go. And then the vulnerability. And so I felt the vulnerability really just now when you went through that. And I want to thank you for that. Because again, when that happens, I just feel that much closer. And so I feel that much more closer to you. Even I was present then.
Yeah.
And so, and there's no time in this world. It's all at once. That's kind of one of those philosophical statements.
Yeah, I went there with you. I'm right there.
Okay, thank you.
We're there.
So I was looking at the time. We got just about a minute or two left. I just want to make certain you know how much I appreciate you being able to make time for today with your amazingly I would say ridiculous busy schedule.
Really
I mean,
not
it is just
that.
over the top.
I'm
It's like
telling you,
it was brilliant. It's brilliant because if you could have seen this, let's say 20 years ago, hey Shawn, this is what you're going to be doing. You'd have looked at that and either passed out, scoffed, laughed, went the other way. Who knows? And yet here you are.
Yeah.
So thank you. You're amazing, inspiring individual for those that are coming into the field. And, of course, I look forward to seeing you at LAC this year. And are you presenting?
No, actually, I'm not this year. I told him I'd be open to it if he needed it. I typically try to rotate. Last year, I presented on the wounds of a child growing up in addiction. And this year, he asked me if I would. And I told him, I've got something I could probably bring up. But he was able to get enough submissions, so...
Okay.
So no presentations this year, but yeah. That whole time thing in the self-care, I really have. I wake up, I have about 30, 40 minutes of prayer time. I get to go exercise. I know it seems like I do a lot, but in truth, I have a lot of balance with it now, and it's really very cool.
It is indeed.
Yes.
So look, next week, guys, thank you. I want to thank Shawn, the wonderful Shawn Eves, and I'm going to say the very personable Shawn Eves today. Next week, we're going to have Stuart Bostwick. He's kind of, some people call him Swole Stuart, but we're glad to have him next week, and we hope you'll join us then. For Voices of Recovery, I'm Gregory Greer.